Well, welcome. Good afternoon, students, employees, community members. We're so thrilled to have you. I'm Erin Cunningham Ritter, representing the College of Arts and Sciences Be Well program. And I'm pleased to welcome you to this Let's You Well event highlighting financial wellness, including some reflections on the current financial chaos. Today's workshop features Diane Hirschhorn, who is a lecturer of finance in the Leeds School of Business and a wealth manager. This presentation is a second part of a series of events with Diane. You can access the recording of the first presentation on the Be Well website. Also, just want to put a little plug in. We've established a great partnership with Diane. So if there's finance questions that you're interested in getting answered or want to learn more about specific topics, at the end of this session, we'll have you put those in the chat, or you can email me or Diane, and we'd love to customize programming for you. Before we begin, please note that closed captioning is available by clicking on the live transcription button on the menu bar. And this session will be recorded so we can post it on the Be Well website. Do feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, so you can raise your hand or put them in the chat. Although, please try and keep the questions general enough, and we'll save, if you have really personal specific questions, we'll try and save some time at the end of the session. So now I am pleased to introduce our Be Well Expert of the Month, Diane Hirschhorn. Ms. Hirschhorn has over 20 years of wealth management experience as a financial advisor, providing complete wealth management strategies to clients. In addition to lecturing at CU Boulder, she is currently a consultant to financial institutions. Previously, she worked as a managing director at First Republic Bank and also at Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs. During her career as a wealth advisor, she received several industry awards, and at CU Boulder, she was a Marinus Smith Award recipient. Ms. Hirschhorn received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Economics from Cornell University and an MBA from the Anderson School at UCLA. She is also a certified private wealth advisor, and it is my great honor to introduce and pass things over to Diane Hirschhorn. Diane, take it away.
Thank you, Erin. So I have to begin. If you don't have your camera on or your video, if you don't mind putting it on, it just makes it easier for me to teach. I don't care if you step away, if you grab lunch, whatever you want to do, it just makes it more engaging for you and for me. So thank you for all those who are turning it on. Also, I'm very informal. Like, this is your presentation. I'm trying to change lives and improve your financial situation. That's my goal. And so please feel free at any time, either raise your virtual hand or put something in the chat. If you have a question, let's just address it and make the best use of your time and also mine. And I also want to thank Erin at Be Fit Well and Work Well, both organizations. I just love teaching at CU. For many years, as she was saying, I was a high net worth wealth advisor. So I was working with people who had like a minimum of $10 million all the way up to 150 million. And that was really fun. But one day I woke up, and as you get older and older, you start to wonder what your purpose is in life. And I was like, wow, like if I were to die today, they're going to write on my gravestone, Diane made rich people richer. That didn't have quite the ring that I wanted it to have. And so I sold my wealth management practice and met someone at CU who said, hey, do you want to teach this one class in advance?
Especially with everything going on in higher ed.
And so
And they'll follow. Clearly, they've followed over the past few years. But what you've done with class.
Bedford. Okay, great. That's great. Sorry. I lost my train of thought there for a second, but someone at CU asked me to teach one class, and then I really was going to just retire and not do anything. And now I have this super duper passion for teaching people, the average person, my friends, my family members, and people like you. Hey, how do the rest of us create financial independence? Because I think ultimately it will help you not only prepare for your future, but alleviate stress and anxiety. So let me just jump into the presentation. And again, if you have any questions, please just stop me. midstream. So Erin already went through my boring background, so you don't really need to do that. Of all of the awards I've won, so I've won some in the investment world, but the one I was most proud of was the Marinus Smith Award at CU, because students get to nominate people within the CU community for making a difference in their lives. And that's just really was such an honor, because that's really what I'm all about today, trying to make a difference in people's lives. So I do have this huge disclaimer and I won't read it, but essentially I want you to know I'm here to provide not financial advice, but educational advice. So I'm going to teach you a whole bunch of things, and hopefully you walk away feeling much more secure and confident and learning a range of different things you could do. But if I use examples where we talk about the markets, nothing I'm going to say today should be considered investment advice. And it's important you know that, or tax advice or estate planning advice, because I don't know your personal situation. And everyone's situation is different, and what might be good for Erin may not be good for me, and vice versa. Okay, so in the last CU Be Well presentation, it was part one. And so essentially I talked about what is financial independence.
Over there, and I put a
How
cup
we
over there,
do
right?
it.
And how'd we do in round one?
Then also,
Not
so
very
I'm
good.
just going to pause first.
Why did we do so much better? in
Erin,
round
can you? Thank you. So sorry.
one?
How do you?
We did, okay.
Oh, we're all going to have a sense of humor today. How do you set effective retirement goals? How do you earn more interest on your bank account? Such easy thing to do. You could probably earn 5 times or more without any additional risk. And how do you create a simple budget? That recording is available on CUB Wells website. The numbers are going to be different, right? Because whatever we went over, like the interest rates you could get 6 months ago have changed, but the concepts and principles should be the same. Today, I had all of these amazing things I want to talk to you about, and then the market blew up. And so, as in case you haven't been watching the news, which we all are, it's just presenting a really good teaching opportunity. And so I really don't think there's no way we could get to all of these objectives under part 2. And so ideally what I want to do is review like financial wellness, talk a lot about the current markets. What do you do in an environment like this? What is really happening? How can I help you sleep better at night so you have an understanding of what you own and how it might react in this kind of market? And then if we have time, hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about like, how do I invest? And I'm going to use some specific examples from CU's retirement plans. If you want to walk away from this and do something, what might you do? Then if we have time, we're going to talk about paying off debt or investments. Like, how do I decide what to do if I have a mortgage? Maybe I have student loans. Maybe I have like retirement choices. Like, what do I do first? I want to save for my kids' 529 plans or for their education. How do I do that? And then we're going to talk about the alphabet soup of CU's retirement plans. There's so many of them. We'll have time for Q&A. And so my guess is probably we're definitely going to get through part 2, topic 1 today. Probably have time to do part 2, like start investing. And then the rest, if we don't get a chance to do today, we're just going to talk about it in future lectures. And to the extent you have any other questions, any other topics that you want me to talk about in future lectures, this time is for you. So please either email me, put it in the chat, or email Erin so we know what you want to learn. And just a quick review, because this came up last time, is like, what is financial independence? What is she talking about? Can I really, really achieve this on my income from CU? So in my opinion, financial independence is simply having enough money, having your portfolio be large enough so that it can cover any of my spending needs, right? So that I no longer have to work, but rather I choose to work. And I came across this concept when I was, I don't know, probably 25. I mean, I just had the worst job in the world. I was slinging copiers, like selling them door to door, literally in cold weather is awful. And it just motivated me. I had this epiphany. This is not what I want to do with my life. And so that's when I became so interested in finance and in creating financial independence. So my goal was by the time I was 30, I wanted to have enough money that my portfolio would support me. And I did it. So ever since I was 30, I've been able, I choose to work. I love what I do now, but I don't have to. And that's my gift to my students. And I hope I can encourage you that you can do it. Almost anyone can do it on any income. Sure, it's easier to do if you make more, but I'm telling you, I didn't make much selling copiers and I was able to do it as well. So what does that look like? That I could pay off my bills suddenly from the income from my portfolio, that I didn't have any more debt, got rid of it, that I had a safety net for emergencies or an emergency fund. And then that left me free to spend my time. I owned suddenly my own time. I can choose to do with it what I want. So why do I think this topic is so important? Because it reduces stress and it overall improves your health. Like the number one reason why people get divorced is typically fights over money. It's so much tension. Take ownership of your time and greater control of your life. This is just a big one for me. Like I really didn't want to be selling copiers anymore. And so it really enabled me to pursue passions that I was interested in and to do work that I really believed in. And then ultimately financial independence, again, having this portfolio that does the heavy lifting for you or the work, instead of me selling my time for money, allowed me to have security. I'm not happy. I'm telling you, watching what's happening in the market, it's super hard for me. It's super hard for everyone. It just leaves my stomach, like a pit in my stomach, except I'm really not up at night, sleeping like a baby, because I know my portfolio is set up to withstand the current chaos. So I want to open this up, and Erin, I can only see 6 people, so I'm hoping that you can call on people. But I was hoping I get a few volunteers to tell me, if you brainstorm, like what are 4 threats? Just give me one. If I could get a few volunteers to give me a threat that they think to like investment success might get in the way of investment success. Can I get a few volunteers? Oh, thank you, Steffi. What do you got?
Hi there. Losing your job, because losing your source of income would be a major threat to being able to invest in any kind of future.
I would totally agree. I didn't write about that here, but if you don't have a job, then you don't have income. And then it'd be harder to invest and you might have to withdraw money. Do I have any other people? Think about what's happened to the market lately, like anything. Megan.
Hi, everyone. Hi. I think also thinking about like not having a diversified kind of portfolio, like if you have everything in one basket and then that basket kind of doesn't do what you expect it to do, that could be quite.
I'm going to say the top thing that people worry and most say is building off your answer is just like the market could blow up. It could go down, 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 and that is ugly. Anyone think of bonds and tell me what might happen with bonds that could cause you to be concerned as an investor? Anyone?
And Diane, while they're noodling on that, we've got some great comments in the chat. Panic and a meltdown, panic selling, chasing trends, ignorance, stock market crash, major health issues, portfolio not diversified enough, and no emergency funds.
All perfect answers. So I'm just going to talk about a lot of those today. So let's review them. So yeah, like we just said, like the stock market going down is never ideal. It's very stressful. And some of those behaviors you talk about, like during market crises, can interfere with your long-term success. Bonds, the main risk is you don't get paid back. They default. So you don't get 100 cents back on the dollar. There are other risks with bonds that I'm going to minimize them right now. Inflation is a silent killer of a portfolio. Most people don't realize that if you keep money in cash, it may make you feel good, may make you have peace of mind. But bank accounts, most of you are probably earning 0.01%. Not all, but most of you are earning nothing on your bank account. And after you leave this lecture, please, in the next few days, check it how much interest you're earning. If you're dealing with a big bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, any of them, you're hardly earning interest. And so those places mean that if inflation is in a typical year, let's say 3%, you're losing 3% per year to inflation. That is toxic to your investment returns. And then the last one someone mentioned in Erin's list is investor behavior. Like Benjamin Graham was one of Warren Buffett, who's a very, very famous investor. He was one of his mentors. And he said an investor's chief problem is, and even his worst enemy, is likely to be himself. Investing itself, I'm going to show you some really simple ideas today. Actually, it's easy to understand, but very difficult to, it's hard to stay disciplined and it's hard to be successful because of our emotions. So I want to touch a little bit about the
On to the next topic, just real quick in the chat. We've got a great thread about building credit that I'll save till the end of today's session, but also some comments. Online banks legit can have 4% on savings accounts. And then another comment, high yield savings, Everbank, Discover Bank, Ally, Amex Bank, around 4%.
Okay, so you guys just hit 5 or 6 of them that are amazing, right? Amazing things. And so here's the thing, and I don't want to spend too much time because I gave a lecture and I spent maybe 10 minutes. So please, this in my mind is free money. Why do I consider it free? Because Ally, Marcus, a number of those banks that were just mentioned, these online banks, they have much lower cost structure than, let's say, a Bank of America. I worked at Bank of America. I worked for Merrill Lynch, which is bought out by Bank of America. So I have nothing against them specifically. I'm a consultant to one of these big banks right now. All is great, except most of us don't check the interest rate we're earning on our bank account. And all of these banks, as long as they have what's called FDIC insurance, the security is the same. Like we think that Wells Fargo is a safer bank than Ally Bank because Ally Bank is just online, but they both have FDIC insurance. And so you can earn probably 4.5% right now. And there's a video that we recorded showing you how to do that. And so I don't want to repeat myself, but awesome, awesome comments, everybody. Okay, Erin, are we okay talking about the current market? Yes. Okay. Keep the questions or comments coming. It really helps me understand what you are all thinking and how I can help you. And please raise your virtual hands. I love participation. Okay, so the last few weeks have been volatile to say the least. Like the indexes, like the US indexes were down about 10% initially, immediately following Trump's announcement about these new tariffs. The reason why is these tariffs, although Trump has said he was going to do it, no one expected them to be as aggressive or high. So the market really, really went down about 10%. And right now, as of like last night, the market was down about 8% year to date. That's just not great. It's just upsetting to me. It's upsetting to everybody. And so unsettling headlines, the news, all of these media, whether it's the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, CNBC, they are paid for readership. They're getting paid really for selling and ads. So the more extreme and exciting they can make the news, the more worried you're going to be and the more you're going to tune in. So one of my tactics in environments like now, I don't read every last article. I don't have CNBC going on all day. It's going to be very unsettling, even for professional investors. They're all worried, just like you. The tariffs can lead to really significant losses, not only in these big companies, which is what's part of either the Dow Jones Industrial Average or another index called the S&P 500, but also for smaller companies as represented by a different index that measures small companies is down 17% year to date. And so these definitely are challenging times, even though like the last few days have been a little better. Why do small cap stocks tend to, or smaller businesses tend to react more? They're just more sensitive to changes in economic conditions because they're more leveraged, which means they borrow more. And so while long-term trends typically point upward, there is always short-term turbulence, and that can make us nervous. So this is an important one. I know that we're in for volatile times and suddenly my phone blows up and I get all of these texts and emails from former students and friends of mine who suddenly come out of the woodwork saying, oh, like, what's going to happen next? Oh my God, Diane, is this the right plan? And I think this politically, and I think that politically. And so I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on, whether you're super far to the left or super far to the right, or for most of us, probably somewhere in between. The market doesn't care about your politics. And so I don't want you to look at your portfolio through the lens of your personal politics, because that's going to interfere with your success. So yeah, like there were dips. The recent volatility was due to this tariff announcement. And it just prompted a whole range of different articles and people's opinion. And people tend to respond in ways that are informed by their political views. I hate tariffs. I think these are really bad. And this is why I think I should sell everything. Or I love tariffs because this is going to protect the US from foreign competition, or whatever those arguments are. But that's not the reality of what's going to make the market go up or down. So I really try to distance myself from my own political views. And the stock market, it's always volatile. That's one of the reasons why we get paid more to be investors in the stock market. Because if the market was perfectly predictable and had even returns, we wouldn't get this extra compensation. We'd get a lower overall return. The reason why you get a greater return is it's a compensation for it being riskier than the cash you have in your bank account or the bonds. So here's the trick when people are calling saying, what should I do now based on the politics, right? The market instantly incorporates new information, especially since, I don't know, 2000 or the late 1990s, when everything became so networked instantaneously. News is incorporated into the price of a stock. Why? Because when I'm buying a stock, all I'm doing is I'm buying a little piece of a company. That company, because I own a portion of it, I get a share of the profits. And so instantaneously, as there's news that's incorporated, if it's bad news and I think the profits are going to go down, that's what the market signaled. When tariffs were, Trump initiated tariffs, or started to talk about them before he retracted some of them temporarily or paused. People were thinking en masse, all right, tariffs means the price both of our imports are more expensive. So if we want to buy something as a consumer, so maybe people buy less, or maybe if we export things, there'll be less of a demand. And the imports is related to other countries also putting on tariffs on our goods and services. But to the extent that we are importing, for example, from China right now, and that there are these enormous tariffs, if I'm a manufacturer of automobiles or semiconductors or medical equipment or certain other industries, defense contractors, they all import goods and services from China, and it will be more expensive, which in turn will make their profits go down. And that's why we saw such volatility. Do you know something before you're going to trade on an idea? Do you think you know something that everybody else, the entire market, does not know? So, because if you're trading and you're going to sell something or buy something, you're really, because there's news that you happen to know. Well, first of all, if you know that news and you're trading on inside information, that doesn't work. That's illegal. everything else is already incorporated into the current price of whatever you're buying. So do you really think, if I'm using this as an example, like you don't believe in these tariffs and so you want to sell, do you somehow know that Trump is going to keep these tariffs? Will he change his position? Do you think he's going to lower them, but then by how much? Will he raise them even more? And do you know how other countries are going to react? And if you don't know the answers to these questions, I don't know. I don't even think Trump's staff fully knows what's going to happen next. And so thus it's impossible to trade on this information. So my big takeaway is political views, they can certainly shape how you vote, what you believe, your worldview, but it shouldn't shape your investment strategy. And we're going to talk a lot about this. So rather than react emotionally, I think you should take the opportunity to review your portfolio and also your investment strategy and use this period and this volatility as a checkpoint. Is this the right plan? Have the fundamental reasons why I set this up, have they changed? But it's not really a reason or a catalyst to change everything. It may be, but it's not for certain. And focus on staying up on a plan that's aligned with your overall financial goals. Avoid an instantaneous knee-jerk reaction. In my experience, they often hurt far more than they help. And I'm going to prove that to you shortly. And remember, short-term market moves shouldn't really derail your long-term plans. If anything, I would use these market dips as an opportunity to say, hey, what's my goal? I don't know. I want to fund my kids' education. I want to buy a house. I want to retire. Any of those goals. Am I on target? Should I invest more? Is this the wrong plan? And those collectively is what drive what I should be doing. So my advice to you, first of all, just avoid any hasty emotional decisions because they lead to fear-based choices. For example, moving everything to cash. And I have friends who've done this, right? I had a client who came to me probably in 2011, and he was so proud that he had forecasted that the market was going to go down, or he sold a lot of his assets when the market dipped in 2008. But then he waited 3 full years before he reached out to find a new investment advisor. So he missed 3 full years of a market going up. And so what did he do? He had his money just in cash. He lost a tremendous amount of upside. So while cash feels safe, it carries its own risks. Like it's certainly subject to inflationary risk, and cash itself historically loses money to inflation, so it really doesn't grow. And my number one goal as an investor is to at least grow my assets greater than inflation. Because if I don't, I'm not preserving my capital over time. Instead of reacting emotionally, I would stick, someone said this earlier in the comments, to a diversified. What that means is a portfolio that has a bunch of different assets, cash and bonds, and maybe my house, maybe some, cryptocurrency or some other things. And make sure it's suited to your risk profile and your time horizon. Don't reassess your risk profile in the middle of a market going down. And so here's the classic thing. My former clients were almost all entrepreneurs, and they were household names and started really big and famous companies, or I dealt with some entertainers. And so everybody coming to me would say, oh, like, Diane, I'm super comfortable with risk and I can tolerate it. And I would say 95% of my students will say the same thing in my classes. I'm super risk tolerant. They are not saying that right now. So the reason why they think they're risk tolerant is because people are thinking this when the markets are going up. And the markets go up, roughly 2/3 of the time and down about 1/3 of the time. And so it's really easy the majority of the time to be comfortable with risk. When the rubber hits the road, though, is thinking through how you'll act when the markets go down. The reason why I don't like reassessing my risk profile in the middle of the market going down, it usually means the market's going down. This is terrible. I hate this feeling. I'm going to sell what I have. And that usually means I'm locking in losses. I just have never seen a successful investor do this. So embrace the market going down, right? So everybody on this call, I'm sure 99% of you are younger than me. So I'm telling you, even I, at my age, I probably have at least 30 years left to live. And so I really believe I, along with all of you, have a really long time for the markets to respond as they have historically. What I typically see, and you may have seen this chart before, is this behavior, which is investors have this cycle of emotions. And the really strange thing is if I were to tell you there's a sale right now on cars, or there's a sale on at Nordstrom or any major retailer, Amazon, I don't care which, people get more excited and they want to buy more. And conversely, prices go up. In rational markets, people want to buy less. With stocks, because of this fear and greed, when prices are going up, they're becoming more and more expensive. That's the riskiest time to invest because the price is higher. But now, as we're probably in this period between anxiety and fear, the prices have calmed down. So if anything, you should probably feel a little bit more uncomfortable investing today. I'm not suggesting you do that, but prices are about 10% lower than they were at the end of the year. So if you were investing in your 401k plan at the end of the year and you were comfortable doing it, things are a little cheaper. And so you should reframe. I say to all my students, please, like, markets pulling back are actually an opportunity. The younger you are, the better the opportunity it is for you because you have a longer period of time. This chart just shows you what happens to a mutual fund representing investors, mutual funds, right? A collection, let's say, of stocks. And what you see here, this gray bar is really the return of the S&P 500 or stocks as a proxy for stocks. Up here is investors wanting to move money into stocks. And down here, more investors want bonds. And if you had time to review this chart, what you notice is after the market drops, people aren't adding to stocks. After it drops, they're buying more and more bonds. So the prices are going lower and suddenly they want something safer and frankly more expensive. Conversely, when the price of stocks becomes lower, they're selling. And one of the worst rules for investing is to sell high, sell low, buy high. You want the reverse. You want to buy low and sell high. But that's not what most investors do. Sadly, and I could show this next time, most investors, right? Most investors get a return overall on their accounts similar to cash or T-bills. So you invest for 30 years or 50 years, and you would have been better off just holding cash. In fact, you're not better off because you're losing money to inflation. Why would they be better off? Because they're pulling money in when the market is expensive and they're pulling it out when they're afraid. And so they try to time the market. Time the market is Diane calling me on the phone, my friends sending me emails or countless texts. Is now the time to invest or should I be selling? Well, first of all, I don't know. Not one single pundit knows. And I'm going to open this up for discussion for one break for a second. Can anyone raise their virtual hand and tell me, name one famous investor? Any famous investor, I don't care who. Can you raise your virtual hand and come up with one? Yeah, Patty.
Buffett.
Yeah, Warren Buffett is a great example. And probably if I had an hour for this more, we'd come up with, between all of us on this call, easily 20 famous investors or more. There are hundreds, okay? Now I want to say, Can you come up, anyone on this call, can you come up with a famous market timer? So someone who doesn't buy stocks for the long run, but they know exactly when the market's at the low, and that's when they buy and they tell us about it. And then they sell when the market's at a high. So in fact, I'm going to sweeten the deal. I'm going to give you $100, $100 right now. I'm probably the most frugal person on this call. I never part with money easily, but I'm going to give you $100 if you can name a market timer, and it can't be, let's say, Nancy Pelosi or someone maybe who has questionable, nothing against her, but it's been shown that through her track records, maybe some members of Congress have access to information that the rest of us don't. Can anyone come up with someone? So no, there isn't one. So thus, I'm freeing up your time. Stop listening to what market pundits say, because they don't know, right? They are just guessing. They have their own biases, and they have no track record for being successful. I give this question, I usually give a higher prize to my students. I've never found someone who can find a strategy right now that's successful consistently at market timing. Why? So the reason why most investors, most of us, don't do well with our investments, if I just started with $10,000 and I invested it, as an example, in a 40-year period, just $10,000 at the end of 40 years. So if I'm now 22 years old and I'm on this call, I have at least a 40-year time horizon before I need to withdraw this money for my retirement. 10,000 because of market compounding would be worth $700,000, $700,000. If I missed just the 5 top days out of, I don't know how many working days there are that the market is open, but over 40 years, let's say there's at least 200 plus working days, right? Missing 5 days, just 5, my return drops by a third. If I missed 10 single days in a 40-year period, 10 days, my return is less than half, and so forth. If I miss just the top 50 days, that has to be less than 1/100th of 1% of all the days. My return, it's down by a factor of 12 or 14. Like, that's insane. So I want to ask you, someone just guess. Can I get any one person to guess? Like, when do you think these top days of the market are? Like, what is it? Like, what time period do you think these really amazing days for market returns are? Anyone want to guess? What might lead to amazing returns? So it's typically, there's 2 kinds of markets, essentially. And
Oh, Diane, you got some guesses. Can I
Okay.
share them with you?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Nils says right after big downturns, 2008, COVID. Jessica says elections. Bernadette says first quarter.
So Nils, like, fantastic. Like, almost no one comes up with this, right? So the answer is it's usually in the height of a bear market. So this is a 20-year period, and it does, I'm going to show you the most recent update on the next slide. But look at this. 2008, 2008, 2020, 2009. These are all bear markets, a down market. So in the height of the market going down, it tends to flip suddenly. And we saw that last week. So last week, the 3rd best day for the S&P 500 in the history of the S&P 500 since 1957 was on April 9th. And the market was up 9.5% in a single day. So if you were sitting on the sidelines and said, okay, I'm going to pull my money out on April 8th or April 7th, and then you say, okay, you call me on the phone. I have clients who do this on April 10th. They say, you know what? I actually think the market is safer now. Now we can put the money in. And I would say, are you kidding? Now it's more expensive. So that's why market timing just doesn't work. And so anytime you are upset and agitated because the market is going down, I want you to look at this chart, and you're going to see all of these annualized returns for the S&P 500, right? How much it went up. And you could see on average, there are many, many, many more times that the market went up than down. But then look at minus 17%, minus 18%, minus 17%, minus 7%, et cetera, minus 30, 34. What are those? That is how much the market in any single year, in all of these years, sold off from its high. So when we get all agitated, the market sold up so much in the last few weeks, it's happened over and over and over again. So I just remind myself, I'm on a ship and I've hit some storm, but generally I'm a really good pilot or captain, or my investment advisor is. And there's always a reason not to invest. Look at this, like the Great Depression, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Black Monday. So for all those people who are saying, gosh, like the political environment, it's changed. Boy, I'm with you. It agitates me. It probably agitates everyone, but it's not stopping me from investing because we've been through very rocky times, and generally the market has gone up over long periods of time. So
Diane, Holly has a really interesting comment around that. She says, call me crazy, but I believe that while all this is business as usual and what's been true in the past, I feel like we're in a truly unprecedented situation right now.
okay, and Holly, I'm gonna say, yeah, to me, does this seem unprecedented? You know, the last few weeks and some of the amount of changes and the scope of these tariffs. Yeah, in my investing lifetime, I haven't seen it. And now I want to go back to 2020. And there is this thing called COVID, and it was a worldwide pandemic. And we had never seen anything like that. It was completely unprecedented. And then I went back to 2008, and we had this cataclysmic world financial crisis. We were just teetering on the edge of, honestly, a depression. And luckily, like there was Fed policy that really helped mitigate that. But that to me was unprecedented. Like Merrill Lynch, the firm bank, oh, wait, let me just think about the firms that Bear Stearns went under. Lehman Brothers, both firms have been around, let's say 100 plus years, like totally unprecedented. Merrill Lynch, where I worked at the time, we were just bought out at the last minute by Bank of America because the Fed said, sat down and said, we can't lose another big bank. We will collapse. Worldwide economic failure. Totally unprecedented. 2000 to 2002. Right? We had this crazy, crazy technology boom and suddenly this massive, massive, massive failure. So yeah, does it feel different? It does feel different. And I'm going to say the reason for the collapse always changes, the name of it. And each time is always scary. And for me, doesn't matter the name of it. I really have found they're never different. They always feel like awful. I can remember for those of us who are old enough, like 2008, I knew so many people who were losing their job, who lost homes and real estate. So the name of it, the scope is different, but I really feel like there's still a lot of predictability and long-term returns. What will happen tomorrow, next year, the next few years? I don't know. But I personally still am confident as long as we live in a capitalist society where we are investors and we get paid and there's motivations for companies to be profitable. If we are an investor, we own a share of that. And I believe ultimately that is what drives market returns.
Well, and Holly says, I hope you're right, Diane. I'm terrified to lose the tiny bit I've saved.
Yeah, so then Holly, like, and for everybody, so it's always terrifying, right? So maybe you have to decide what fraction. I said this to my own children. My kids are now, my daughter just graduated early, so I got a raise, right? Because I don't have tuition anymore. And I said to her and my son, who are both at the beginning portions of their career, I want you to imagine, and they're still investing. Guess what? I'm still investing. And I said, I want you to close your eyes and imagine whatever dollar amount that you work super hard for, that you traded hours of your life for this money. That's really what we do when we work. And I want you to say, like, let's just say they put $10,000 in. I want you to imagine it's worth half and decide if you can stick with that. Because since I've been investing, there have been 3 corrections that have the market's gone down between 40 and 50%. And sure, I think 2020 felt better because the market recovered so quickly. I don't really think that's going to happen this time. May. But it's always scary. And so I said, we don't want to invest anything for you that you're not comfortable looking at it and seeing that it's worth half. And I said, really, for them, because they're so young, embrace it. Like, be thrilled. Because if you're 22, 24, 30, 35, 40, you have so much time. Even I have a ton of time. So I feel prices are lower. They're getting a deal. But it is scary. I'm not denying that. It makes me nauseous. It really does. What do I recommend you do? And I've got to wrap this up in 5 minutes so I can have Q&A. I think you should build a reserve fund at every stage. So that's just an emergency fund, because it's going to help cushion you to prevent a situation that Holly's talking about. Oh, I'm really scared, or I'm right next to, I'm just about to retire. And I have friends calling me saying this. Well, do we have enough cash to cover some of your spending needs? And I'll show you how to do that. If you're working, I would make sure you have 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund. When someone said one of the biggest risks to your investment portfolio is losing your job, indeed, like some of these fundings are getting rid of, maybe affecting those of us at CU, who knows? Like, do you have enough cash to cover your needs? Because I certainly don't want to be liquidating my portfolio when the market's down. And if you're retired, I would recommend that or about to retire, I'd recommend that you keep 1 or 2 years of spending in either a very short-term bond or cash, because that way, statistically, the chance of the market continuing to stay down, or rather recovering, is much higher if I have a 3-year, 5-year, or 10-year period. So that's why if you're retired or want to retire, maybe have a little bit more bonds, maybe set up some spending. So I'm not in a situation, the market isn't as scary for me if I know either my portfolio is generating enough income for me to live on, or if I can cash in on some of my bonds if the market is down. And this is not investment advice, I have to say this, but if you are in college now or newly working and have parents that you can rely on, siblings, friends, I really don't think if you're super young, you should follow the advice of having 6 months of expenses set aside. It's just impossible. Like, if you advise my kids, let's just say they're not earning this. I'm going to use this as an example. Let's pretend they're earning $100,000 a year or $70,000 after tax. Their rent alone is probably $25,000 a year. So suddenly they're down to maybe $50,000 a year that they have. They've got to cover their utilities, their food, whatever else. And if, let's just say, their monthly expenses are $3,000 a year, $3,000 a month, setting aside 6 months, that means they'd have to put $18,000 just sitting in cash, which I just said is a terrible investment. So I just said to them, look, you can borrow from the bank of mom and dad. Keep 1 month of spending set aside. I don't think you're losing your job, but if you do, and you need us to lend you money, we know you're a good credit. You'll pay us back. The next thing I recommend you do, and Erin, are we allowed to go a little over? Because I have so much to cover.
Now let's go a little over. We'll be mindful of your time, but then also recognize that a lot of our guests may need to hop off the call. Like I said, we'll be posting the video on the Be Well website, so you can
So I
catch up
want
if
us
you
to
want.
cover what you should all do, and then I'll stay on. I'll finish this hopefully by 2, and then we can have Q&A for 10 minutes after that. And I apologize. There's just so much great stuff happening right now. I think you should. And if you have a question and you have to get off, please add it to the chat and Erin can repeat it. Maybe we can address it. Okay, so just be careful of these safer assets like cash and bonds because they do have inflation risk. And yeah, I really think inflation could be a serious outcome of some of these tariffs if they're actually implemented in 90 days on a broad scale, because it's going to push prices higher. And investing in stocks, believe it or not, even if you're really conservative, as long as you have the stomach to stay invested in a plan and disciplined, you should probably have 30% to 40% of your overall portfolio as a rule of thumb invested in stocks because stocks can raise prices. Companies can raise prices in inflationary environment. That doesn't happen with most bonds. And if you're currently working, you already have some protection. You may not realize it against inflation, but of course, CU gives us a modest pay raise every year. And so, and your spouse hopefully has some pay raise as well. So that helps us fight inflation. And if you're considering retiring soon, let's say you're 50 or above, you probably need to consider some inflation protection to inflation protected bonds. And I could talk about these more in another lecture. We don't have time now, but there's certain bonds that have this really nice benefit that they adjust their value based on whatever current inflation is. So what might I consider doing in a down market or a volatile one? I might consider selling some of my losing investments, something that has a loss. Why would I ever do this? Because the government subsidizes our loss for everyone, not just for wealthy investors. We can talk about this more in another lecture too, but there's something called tax loss harvesting. And if you're interested in this subject, you may want to look at a website called Investopedia. I love that website. It's not biased, has really good information. And basically what tax loss harvesting does is it says, hey, sell your losers. You could buy something else very similar. You could buy the exact same security 30 days later, but the government will basically allow you to take that and offset your income or your gains. Again, there are different rules for both. And if you have a lot of losses in an environment like that, it's a useful tax tactic. Replace them with similar but not identical holdings. And then I want to consider doing something called a Roth conversion. At a later lecture, I hope to talk about Roth versus traditional accounts because we have both as an option at CU. But just as a quick overview, Roths just mean I'm contributing after-tax dollars. This could be a Roth IRA. It could be a Roth 401k. They all work the same way. So I make $100,000. I pay $30,000 in taxes. I have $70,000 left. Of that $70,000 left, I can put some of it into a Roth. They're amazing investments. They're amazing tax preferred accounts because the money continues to grow and grow. I pay taxes once, I never pay taxes again. We all, especially those of us who are older, also have these traditional accounts. CU, your spouse's plans, they don't ever label them traditional. They'll be labeled Roth, which means I'm investing after-tax dollars. The traditional ones mean I'm putting in pre-tax dollars, which means reduces my taxable income. I pay a little bit less in taxes that year, but I have to pay taxes when I take the money out. Ross, I don't have to pay taxes ever again. So we'll go over this in a later lecture. If your tax rate is low, you're not, let's say, you're at the very beginning of your career for certain, and you think your income tax rate and income is going to go up, Roths are a better choice. Pay taxes now, don't pay it later when your tax rate is higher. Traditional is the reverse. I'm in the highest income tax bracket, and I think my tax bracket will be lower when I retire. Then I want to do traditional. So all a Roth conversion is just the ability to take a certain amount of money that I had in my traditional 401k, my traditional IRA, and convert it. Does not do the whole account. I have $300,000 in my 401k plan that's traditional. I can afford to convert 50,000 of it. So I pay a little bit more of taxes that year. Why is it a good time to do it? Because my investments are worth less. So when my account goes down in value, take advantage of it. Pay a little bit less in taxes. Definitely get tax advice before converting any of these accounts. Also talk to your investment advisor. And this is controversial and it's not investment advice, but please consider investing in the market. Like if prices go down, certainly for me, as prices go down, I'm a little more interested. More interested in investing because it means they're on sale. Doesn't mean today. Maybe it's when the market goes down another 10% or even more. But instead of being afraid, channel that fear into something exciting. And as long as I have time, am I guaranteed that the market will go up? I am not. But do I think it's likely? There's been one period in US history, one period that took 17 years for the market to recover. That was during the Great Depression. I think we didn't have as active monetary policy as we do now. But other than that, average time to retire to recover is much, much, much faster. It's 10 years or less. Resist the urge. Don't listen to your friends when they say do something dramatic. Instead, focus on what you can control. Stay thoughtful. Stay invested if that's the right plan. Maintain those cash or emergency reserves. Prepare for inflation. Use these market dips to your tax advantage. We just talked about a few ways to do that. And then I just going to flash these really, really fast because we got to get off. But if I consider there's two main categories of investors here, people who are under the age of 50 and people who are older than 50. What's the difference? Those who are under 50 have a lot of time to withstand this market volatility. Those who are older have less time. So what would I do? I'd check your savings rate, save more. If you can do something like just invest more, save more, trim any extra excess spending because it gives you more money to invest. Review your asset allocation, improve your investment choices. And we could talk about ways to do that later. Access your emergency fund if you need to. Think of yourself as a bond. I say this to my kids, right? They're a bond, I'm a bond. You're all bonds if you're working. Why? You're earning income, right? It sucks when the market goes down, but I'm not dipping into my portfolio. I'm generating income. I have the power to get through, to steer my ship in a very, very bad storm potentially. And I'm going through this super fast. For those who are
Diane, can I jump in really quick? Just so, just a couple announcements before people that need to leave at the top of the hour sign off, and then we'll keep going. This will be recorded. It is being recorded and posted on the Be Well website in a couple of days. So give us a little bit of time to get it up there. Also, here is a link to topics for future financial wellness workshops with Diane. We would love to hear from you. And also those of you participating in Wellable, here's your code. And this session is worth 500 points. That's my housekeeping, Diane. So back over to you.
It really helps if you've learned anything from this talk to let Erin know, because she controls which topics. I would love to teach as much as you want me to come, but Erin controls which topics and where she wants to invest time. So she is an amazing, amazing place to work. To the extent this is useful for you and you let her know, that really helps support her programs. And also, although she's too polite to tell you that, and also to the extent you have any other questions that you want us to address in future sessions, please, please, please let us know. I really would love to cater to what you want to know most. I have hours more that I could talk to you, but I'm just going to open it up to Q&A for those who want to stay. I will not address any questions about your personal situation. I don't know it. So I can't tell you if one choice is better to another, but I can tell you anything educational. Okay.
Well,
Open it up.
Diane, why don't I start the questions off? There's been a lot coming through the chat, so we can do maybe a speed round if you're up for it.
Totally. And I'll stay until 2:15.
Okay, awesome. Danielle asked, I do have a question either for today or for a future session. I have an almost 18-year-old at home. What is the best way for him to start building a credit history? When I was in high school, my mom and I had a joint credit card that started me off, but now that they don't offer joint credit cards, I'm not sure what to do from him. And there was a little back and forth with Danielle and Kathy about opening an Amex card on behalf or a credit card on behalf of your dependent.
Yes. Okay. I think this is great for anyone who has someone on high school onward, because the credit score is important for them to get leases, both at CU or anywhere, actually in College Town or Uni Hill. And then later on, when they want to apply for a job, you don't have to give your credit score, but companies ask for it. And if you don't give it, then it just doesn't look as good. So there's two main companies that lend to students, Discover and Bank of America. And maybe they have a $500 limit, and I'm not endorsing either company. I'm just trying to provide information. So I help my kids open credit cards when they were in high school. Your student or child or neighbor may not get approved instantly because maybe they have zero credit history. And this happened to my daughter, strangely, and not my son. What did I do? Like, as a parent, you can co-sign. And so my daughter took out the credit card, but I co-signed. So I was responsible for her debt. Was I worried? No. First of all, I know my daughter. And second of all, the limit is $500. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I wasn't terribly worried, but I will tell you, I really signed her up for showed her how to sign up for auto bill pay, because I don't want my credit history or hers to be negative impacted. And now suddenly, after a year, she got 1 million different credit card offers. It's a great idea to build credit history. Next.
Cool. Joshua asks, what should I do with my savings account to make it work for me, but still have access to it if I need it?
Yeah, great question. I would consider, not investment advice, please, but I would consider moving it to a higher yielding savings account. So some of the companies we talked about, Ally Bank, ALLY, Marcus, I think MARKUS, there are just countless ones. You can look at websites like, hang on a second, it's called Deposit Accounts. And I will think of the other one. There's several. Put on the internet as a search, price, like compare bank account yields. Fat Wallet might be the other one. No, that one was taken over. I'll think of them. But I would consider moving the cash to a bank account that pays more. I don't need the highest bank account interest rate. But I certainly don't want to waste money. When I see people have these bank accounts, including my son initially had a bank account that was earning 0%, 0.01%. I did maybe 15 years ago. And I looked at the rate, I was disgusted. And I created this as a project for my students to do in class. So love that idea of picking up the yield. You could probably earn 4.5% right now. What else do we got?
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we had just a few comments around some of the slides. Ben said my Roth IRA in a broad stock market index fund since 2016. Steffi says buy the dip. She also said Congress should not be able to invest. We had a question from Megan who asked, what are your thoughts on CDs?
Yeah, okay. So Megan, the answer is it depends. And CDs, one thing I like about them is they have what's called FDIC insurance. And for the question related to the bank, by the way, I would never put my assets in a bank. I don't know of a bank that doesn't have FDIC insurance, but I'm sure they are out there. But I want to make sure my deposits are guaranteed by the government. CDs effectively are like an instrument or a type of bond that's called a treasury. Why do I say that? Treasuries are backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. And since CDs and banks have this FDIC insurance, essentially, if you keep less than $250,000 on balance there, none of us have that to do, right? As long as it's less than that, I'm guaranteed if the bank failed, I'll get my money back. How do I decide whether to put the money in a CD or a bank or treasury, right? Treasury, the way to buy them, just quick plug, treasurydirect.com or gov, treasurydirect.gov, free to use, no commissions, no fees. So it's run by the federal government. So I would compare 1 year treasury versus 1 year CD. And whichever rate is better, that's what I wanted, I'd pick that. So if a CD gives me much higher rate, it's kind of like a treasury, in my opinion. It's not really like a treasury, but it's kind of like one. And so, yeah, I think they can be an okay investment. I also think that you can get much higher investment returns by taking more risk. So.
Awesome, and a great time for a follow-up on CDs. Allison asks, in choosing a term for a CD, how do you decide whether to take less interest for a longer term, for example, 2.5% for 3 years, versus more interest for a shorter term, for example, 4% for 1 year?
Oh, I love this question. And it's really a much long, we should address this in another lecture, but essentially, first of all, when do I need the cash buy? Right? So if I need CDs often before you purchase them, you want to look for the penalties for early withdrawals. If you break them, typically you lose 3 to 6 months interest. And so long CDs, one concern I have with any long CD, wow, that would kind of be terrible if I lost interest. I don't want to lose interest for cashing it in early. I can cash it in early, but I want to be careful. So long CDs, 5 years, for example, 3 years. Is this money that I need in the next 3 months, 6 months, or frankly, 3 years? And if I need it, probably it's not the right maturity. That's the first thing. Second thing is, what do I think is going to happen with interest rates, which is a loser's game. But if I think rates right now, if I can get paid 4.5% in your example for 1 year, and I can make 3% in 3 years, what the market is essentially telling you is that it thinks collectively that interest rates will be lower in the future. And so if I buy the 1 year CD, because I think I'm very clever, I don't need the money and I want to get the money back in a year. Well, suppose interest rates went to 2% in a year. So when I renewed the CD, that would suck if I'm getting paid 2%. It's a very, very hard question to answer because no one knows the direction of interest rates. Like I tell you my guess. So it's when do I need the capital? How much extra interest do I make in a 1 year in this example versus a 3? If it's an insane difference, maybe I'm willing to take the risk. If it's not, maybe I don't want to take the risk. Risk meaning getting a 1 year CD and in a year from now, the interest rates go down. What else?
Diane, you are crushing the speed round. Are you up for 5 more minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Nils asks, bond funds have been a bad investment over the past decade. See Vanguard Total Bond Market, for example. Does the traditional asset diversification of stocks, bonds, cash still make sense?
So this is my belief. This isn't investment advice. And Nels, this is the second time you're asking great or commenting on something that's great. I'm going to say that bonds have been a bad investment just recently. And the trick is, so I don't know. I don't know. I own them, right? I'm not looking for an amazing return with my bonds. I'm looking for peace of mind and as an anchor to my portfolio. I hold my bonds until maturity, so I'm not so worried about the volatility in between. I think what you're alluding to is there was a terrible year for the bond market. I can't remember when. It was something like 2022, and it was an aberration. I had never seen this in my investment career, but what really happened was interest rates were held artificially low after 2008 because the government wanted to stimulate the economy. And it worked. In fact, we avoided total economic collapse, in my opinion, because of great fiscal policy. And then what happened was the government, so we held rates very, very low. And then the government was about to, or the Fed was about to raise interest rate. But then this crazy thing happened called COVID. And so as a result, because there was this unforeseen world cataclysmic event that could have sent the markets totally on a tailspin down. And there was a lot of people who were suddenly unemployed, like service workers, like waiters, actors, you name it. So the government then continued to hold interest rates artificially low. Then suddenly inflation became a big thing. In my investing lifetime, there had never been a year we had almost 10% inflation in my whole life, actually. And that happened. So then the Fed raised interest rates incredibly fast, which killed the bond market. I don't think right now bonds, I actually think have attractive yields. For a long time, I kept saying to my classes and my clients, bonds are super expensive. They're super, super expensive. Like you're afraid of stocks, but bonds are crazy expensive. I don't think that right now. So for me, and I'm only answering for me, Niles, I still want bonds in my portfolio. And I don't think it's over. In my opinion, I just like, I have never seen a situation that this time is different. It's like things eventually go back to a norm, but I could be wrong. Who knows? What else?
Awesome. A couple comments on your last slide, which I believe was for investors over 50. So just in the interest of time, we'll make a note of that to kick off our next workshop to make
Oh
sure that
yeah,
we're including that.
absolutely. And we can come up with, I like just in that time, I had like ideas on like how to actually invest in your 401k plan or your investment choices within CU's retirement plan. We just didn't have time. And then I had another slide on, hey, suppose I want to do this outside of CU, where would I go? And I have that both for young investors and then for people like me who are 50 or older. I know I don't look a day over the age of whatever I am.
I love it. Well, let's end on this question from Joshua. He asks, given the best days of market investing, is it best to invest, say, $1,000 per month or $33 per day?
You can do at most firms either. I don't really know the answer. And because it would be what's called hindsight, like where in 20 years from now, you and I get together again, and then you say, oh, Diane, thank God you told me to invest every day. Or maybe you say, thank God you said do it every month. The reality is it really doesn't matter exactly which day. It matters a lot the actual day you invest, like meaning for the first few months. But if I were to look forward, I don't know, 20 years from now, it's really not going to make a difference. Like because you're going to stay invested. There was a great article by someone named Ben Carlson, and he basically said, suppose you were an unlucky investor and you invested exactly at the market high, like exactly the worst time over and over again for the last 20 or 30 years. Like, would it have made much of a difference? Hardly at all. If it does make a difference, like if market crashes the next day in the first few months or first few years. But even for me, with 30 more years of my life, if I put all of it in at the market high, it's not going to make a big difference. Both strategies reference something called dollar cost averaging. Totally worth reading about in Investopedia. I'm happy to talk about it in a future lecture. I like those strategies because it just removes the pressure. It's set it and forget it. All of our 401k plans are like this essentially, or CU's 401a plan, right? It's just investing for us. Market goes up, we invest. Market goes down, we invest. Awesome. Why is it awesome? Because what essentially dollar cost averaging is when the market goes down, I'm investing more money. It's the same dollar amount, but I'm buying more shares. 1,000 shares and the stock price is $100 a share. I buy $10. But if the price goes down to 5, I'm suddenly buying 20 shares and not 10, and vice versa. Okay, that's all I think we have.
Diane, awesome. Woohoo. Okay,
I
so
love
quick
this.
housekeeping. I'm putting the form in the chat. Please add your ideas for subsequent workshops. Also, we've got the Wellable code in there. But most importantly, let's give a little love to Diane. How awesome is she with her
I
formal
don't need to
presentation,
love.
the
What?
speed round, all of it.
Thank you, Diane. That was
Okay,
great.
no love needed. Love to Erin because she really does like, oh, that's so sweet of you guys, like really, because she's the one who invited me and coordinates this and is super enthusiastic about the subject matter. Love to yourself, Bernadette. You're so cute. And she's sending the hearts there. Oh, thank you so much. But seriously, I don't really need that. Well, the best way to to show me that this means something is by taking the subject matter seriously. I feel like financial independence, investing, honestly, it's not that hard. It's, I guess, how do I phrase this? Warren Buffett once said, investing is not hard. How did he phrase it? But like essentially that it's really, the concepts aren't hard, but it's really hard to stay with the plan. And so like I would really seriously bump up whatever your savings rate is. I don't know, for me, I rarely get sorry to say this, but I rarely order alcohol in a restaurant. Is by the time I'm done with a $10 or $12 cocktail and then $3 for the tip, and then I've got tax, it's like, is it really worth 18 bucks or whatever this is? If I do that like once a week and I save that extra 20 bucks a week, that's suddenly like 80 bucks a month, which is almost $1,000 a year. Like we all have stuff we waste money on. And I would just love it if you seriously thought about how can I learn more?